Okay, I'm going to talk about Maui a little bit. So, all the coverage I'm seeing on Maui, it's kind of bolstering this community response, and the reason that community response is needed is because government is not helping to the extent that they probably could or should. So, this kind of people are coming together, and they're helping themselves, and they're, in effect, they're kind of laughing at the government in conjunction with that. And here's the thing, I mean, you can look to the government to fix your problems, but ultimately, I don't think it's a bad thing that the community is doing it themselves. It's ultimately necessary at this point. If the government's not going to step in, people are doing what's necessary. They're banding together, and they're helping each other. And there's grassroots funding coming from perhaps all over the world, but definitely all over the United States. And there's a lot of independent media coverage kind of bolstering this community response. And again, I think that's a good thing. It's not so much that we need to look down at the government's response to this, but it's that we should be encouraging the community response in disastrous times. However, the point of me making this video is to point something out, okay? We shouldn't be waiting for disasters for communities to work together, for communities to come together and help each other. Why is it? What is it in human nature that makes us wait until there's a disaster before communities help each other? What is it that keeps the wealthy neighborhoods and estates from helping the poor inner city communities before there's a disaster? I mean, I expect the answer to that question is greed and complacency and cognitive dissonance and hypocrisy, all those things. But what happens when that disaster, what happens when you can't get a hold of that disaster? What happens when there's a militant group from some inner city that just gets sick of it all, and they just start hurting people? Or what happens when we allow poor people to get so hungry and so fed up with dealing with financial stress that they just start a civil war? Why do we have to wait until there's a disaster before we come together as a community? And again, that's the point of making this video, is I just want to point out the ridiculousness of it all. You sit here in your comfortable home, and you shut your doors, and as long as you can't hear or see the problems, that's it. They don't exist effectively, right? And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of that myself. The point is that we need to bring the community together and stop focusing so much on top-down policy from the government to help us. We need to work together. We need to raise class consciousness and stop giving power to the government. So, where are our tax dollars going right now? They're going to fight a war in Ukraine, a proxy war that is ultimately causing supply chain issues, and is causing inflation, and it's further hurting the middle class, which ultimately is going to lead to Maui residents paying more for goods and services in this time of disaster. And meanwhile, if that proxy war hadn't been happening, and NATO hadn't been this over-expansionary military asset that sought to rule the entire world, then maybe we would just have money to fund Maui and jump on this problem the way it should be jumped on, right? The way it should be. It's kind of funny, we build these military ships with these insane weapons that some of us that there's probably weapons we don't even know about, and meanwhile, we don't have like a way to put out wildfires in an island, on an island like Hawaii or Maui that's surrounded by water. It's really kind of strange, because I mean, what are we gonna wait till every state's on fire before the community comes together to help each other? Or are we gonna wait till there's like tornadoes ravaging the entire country, tearing houses apart, before we come together? It's like we have an option here, and it's to become conscious of the economic and social standing of our behaviors, or we can jump on top of the problem before it becomes problematic. We can get ahead of these problems. And if we continue to look to corrupt political parties to solve our problems that have proven nothing but the ability to fight wars, then we're going to end up with a bunch of disasters like Maui. I mean, this climate change is going to keep throwing bigger and bigger problems at us, whether it's storms or fires, or whatever it may be, hurricanes, and there's just gonna be more disasters. We should get on top of these problems before we are forced to help each other, because you get enough disasters going at once, and then people start going hungry. And once people start going hungry, once it's not just Maui that's isolated, and several supply chains get disrupted, once that happens, people get violent. And again, it's like the universe is sending us a bunch of warning signs, and here we are just responding to the warning signs in real time rather than doing something proactive. We need to organize, and we have all these warning signs, and we're not doing anything proactive. We're just reacting to the problems in real time. And again, real-time solutions, like, they get messy over time. They get messy in the long term, because again, if a problem if problems are increasing and you still keep depending on real-time solutions, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to have so many real-time problems that you can't react fast enough. Again, the point here is to just work together with your working class citizens to get what you want. Don't look to the government, don't look to politicians to fix the problem for you. There was a senator, I forget his name, I think it was a senator, he said that change doesn't come from Washington, it comes to Washington. Okay, and what that means is change comes from the people. You can't depend on these politicians who are ultimately funded by corporations who want nothing but profit, corporations who don't care if Maui's on fire, right? They ultimately don't care. Maybe they'll pretend they care, maybe they'll do a little funding to keep PR, to look good to the public, right? But ultimately they don't care. And the reason they don't care is because the problems don't affect them yet. But rest assured, if you keep depending on reactive solutions, the problems will end up affecting everybody. And I mean, if you're old and you got 10 years left, you know what, whatever. You can sit in your chair and do nothing about it, because ultimately you won, right? You lived during the prime time in human history. But that prime time is going to come to an end if we don't figure out some proactive solutions to these problems. And so, to the young people out there and the middle-aged people, we got to get on top of these problems, you know. And ultimately, it comes down to largely climate change, but consumerism in general, you know, materialism. If you just keep buying shit that you don't need, you just keep feeding the corporations that don't care, and the corporations fund the politicians and the mainstream media corporations. And they just drive this wealth inequality cycle, and they drive the climate change, the fossil fuel usage, and again, you buy stuff you don't need, wealth inequality gets worse, and all the problems get worse. It's like a simple pattern. All of these things are connected, okay? Whether it's climate change, materialism, corporate profits, political corruption. They're all increasing. Okay, they're all connected to each other. And the only thing that's going to change that is class consciousness. It is the working class working together. And that's it. Thanks for watching.